A Dog Called Houdini, Chapter 3. Mayor Frederick. The mayor of the town was a tall man who, in sunny or warm weather, walked to work, tapping the sidewalk with his walking stick. Occasionally, he stabbed the air or just sliced it with his stick as he strode from his hillside home down through the town along Main Street to his office. It was a pleasant October morning. The air was crisp, and there was a spray of frost on the grass. The sun sat just above the horizon, making diamonds out of the frost. The forest which rimmed the town was in October color, a medley of reds and yellows and greens. It was a kind of morning the mayor liked, and he smiled as he went along, saying good morning to everyone he met. "Nice day, Mayor," they answered. "Lovely," he replied. He tapped the parking meters which his administration had installed. He paused to look into the window of a new store which his engineering department had permitted. He was proud of the town he had helped build. It was his 6th term as mayor, and he was proud of his office, proud of his citizens, proud even of the October morning, as though his engineering department had supplied that too. The thing he liked best about his small town was that just about everyone knew everybody else, and of course they knew the mayor. He liked to listen to their complaints and act on them, or to soothe the complainers and advise them. So when he saw Mrs. Otti standing at the municipal steps, he knew he was going to have to give her a bit of his time, and he actually looked forward to it. Mrs. Otti was a widow, about 60 years old. She had been reduced to a family of only 2 cats and a dog. She often had complaints. At one time, she had wanted the mayor to do something about long-haired youths. Then, she launched a campaign throughout the town trying to convince the citizens to adopt stray cats. She was that sort of woman. The mayor braced himself. "Good morning, Mrs. Otti." "Morning, Mayor." He felt coldness in her voice. This wasn't going to be a trivial problem. Her hair was scrunched beneath a scarf. Her eyes bored into him. The mayor looked around, scanning the town with his eyes. "Isn't this a lovely morning for walking, Mrs. Otti?" She got right to the point. "When are you going to do something about that dog, Mayor Frederick?" "Dog?" Mayor Frederick asked. "What dog?" "The dog that's been running all over town and eating the other dog's food, and picking fights and mauling other people's dogs." "Is there such a dog?" "And scaring people's cats, and rushing at people, and making other people's backyards his race course." "Which dog is that?" asked the mayor fiercely. "It's nobody's, Mayor." "Say that again. How can it be nobody's?" She had to look up at him, this short, starchy lady with a faded scarf around her head. "It's a stray dog, Mayor." "And it's been doing all this, you say?" "Yes, sir. It came out of nowhere. Nobody knows when he came, but he's been worrying everybody. He's been worrying my cats and my dog, and I can't keep any peace." "Outrageous," said the mayor. "And funny thing that I'm only hearing of him now. I will get our dog control officer after him at once." Dog control officer was the mayor's title for the dog catcher. When he took out his pocket diary and began to write in it, Mrs. Otti already felt placated. The mayor was going to do something about that dog. She knew it. He was a no fooling around kind of mayor. That was why she had been voting for him election after election. "I'll act on it, Mrs. Otti," he said. "Black and white, you say?" As he wrote, he spoke under his breath. "Harry's dogs and cats fight." "Thank you, Mayor." "Thank you, Mrs. Otti, for bringing it to my attention. It's good citizens like you who keep a town the livable place it ought to be." Mrs. Otti was overwhelmed by such praise. Smiling widely, she said, "I'm depending on you, Mayor." As the widow turned down the street on her way home, the mayor mounted the steps to his office. In fact, he was not at all ignorant of the dog. Who in the town had not heard of a black and white mutt that roamed about answering to no name? However, now that a citizen had confronted him with a complaint, he would have to call up the dog control officer and make this dog a priority. He could still hear Mrs. Ottie's thrilled voice. "I'm depending on you, Mayor." And he could still see the hawk-like eyes of hers, and he knew perfectly well that every vote counted in a mayoral race. Chapter 4. The Dog Control Officer. By 10 o'clock, the dog catcher was in the mayor's office. Rodney O'Malley was well fitted for his job, for he was a professional trapper. Dog catching was merely a sideline. A man who was used to trapping beavers and otters, lynxes, martens, and even wily fox had no trouble catching mere dogs. He was a small, bald man whose size belied his vigor and strength. O'Malley, who also found time to guide moose hunters, could, it was reported, carry a quarter of a bull moose unassisted. As he approached the mayor's office, he knocked out his pipe in his hand and threw the tobacco ash into the standing ashtray. He moved silently, surely. He was wearing mukluks and a plaid hunting jacket. The mayor's secretary directed the squat man into the inner office. "Morning, Mayor." "Ah, O'Malley. I see you got my call." "I came as soon as I heard, Mayor." Good man, good man. Have a seat, O'Malley." O'Malley took the nearest chair and sat on its edge. He knew the mayor would not have called him in for something trivial. "How's the trapping?" Mayor Frederick asked, deducing from the trapper's clothes that he had just returned from checking his traps. O'Malley didn't like the question. It suggested that while he was out trapping, he was neglecting his dog-catching duties. It was true that O'Malley pretended not to see many a dog. If a dog were too much in the public eye, he would take it in. Or if there were a complaint against one, he would go after it. Otherwise, he didn't hunt down loose dogs. The town council, which had made the bylaw, agreed with this. After all, the town was like one big family. So O'Malley did not like Mayor Frederick's question about his trapping, and he did not answer. The mayor seemed pleasant enough as he peered over his glasses. "We've got a problem, O'Malley." The trapper waited. By now, he had guessed what the trouble was about, but he waited. "It's nothing we can't click, O'Malley. You're the best man I know to handle this." "A dog, Mayor?" "Yes, a dog. A black and white fiend of a dog." "Marauder?" O'Malley asked. "What's that?" "Marauder," O'Malley said again. "That's what some people have been tagging him with." "Oh, so you've met with this marauder?" "Not face to face, Mayor, but he is a dog with a reputation." The mayor, consulting his pocket diary, read from it. "Black and white, Harry's dogs and cats, eats their suppers." "That's the one," O'Malley said. "Folks been calling me about him all these couple of days. What are you going to do about that dog, O'Malley?" "So I'll do something, but I still haven't seen the dog." "You haven't seen him?" O'Malley shook his head. Appears out of nowhere, has no owner, acts wild. Is he big, I wonder?" "Not according to what I hear, Mayor." "Mongrel, most likely." "Most likely. Well, if I see him, I'll put him away right quick." Yes, but we must do more than that, O'Malley." "Huh?" "We must make a point of seeing him. We can't let that dog become more of a celebrity than he already is." "I'll do it," the trapper said, stiffening under the mayor's words. "That's my boy. the other said cheerfully. O'Malley was a proud dog catcher. He would act, but he knew that the job would not be easy, for this dog was somehow different from the others. It was clever, combining the instincts of something wild with the complete knowledge of human beings and their ways. He had a jumpy feeling in his chest that this dog would be a real test. When he reached the steps, he stopped and checked the streets, not for the dog, but to form a strategy and to ram tobacco into his pipe. As he lit up, he remembered the mayor's words. "We can't let that dog become more of a celebrity than he already is." In quick, short strides, he reached his pickup truck. He pulled away from the curb fast, and in a short time pulled up into the driveway of his home on the edge of town. It was one of the older houses, single-storied, with a brick chimney standing erect at one gable end. The paint was peeling from its white boards, but there was a new addition in the back, with tar paper still tacked to the plywood walls. His wife, a bulky woman with a pleasant face, met him in the door. "Rodney, you're upset. What is it?" "Nothing," he snapped. "I'll make coffee," she said quietly, but with strength. O'Malley looked at her and said no more. After a cup of coffee, he got back into the truck and began to cruise slowly around town, looking for the dog. His net was in the back of the truck. He cruised for about half an hour, then drove up Main Street again, turned into Deeb Lane, down Cedar Row, into Brick Lane. Aha! There he was, the marauding dog, trotting along the Canadian Pacific Railway main line. His easy gait and utter lack of concern maddened O'Malley. "Now look at that," he said, stopping the truck. To the dog catcher, a dog who had committed this many violations should have been looking over his shoulder. But not this one. He trotted along like a Lord Mayor of dogs, especially now that he was ambling along a section of the line that rode on a trestle bridge, some several meters above the road on which O'Malley had stopped. Getting out of the truck, O'Malley picked up the net. He would see what he could do. Mr. Godfrey Ames, whose backyard abutted on the railway line, and who had been watching the carefree morning stroll of the dog with irritation, was happy to see O'Malley appear on the tracks. "Wait, Rod," he called. "I'll give you a hand. You're aiming to bag this rascal, ain't you?" "Darn right," O'Malley said as he marched on his mucklucked legs towards the dog, which stood still, boldly assessing this new menace. "Come on, hound," coaxed O'Malley. "Come on, you're not going to run." The dog stood his ground. He seemed to be studying O'Malley as if he wanted to remember this new one. Then Mr. Ames came over his fence behind the dog and climbed the slope to the tracks. He too had a net, not one for dog catching, but an old fishing net. He too was advancing stealthily, and from the rear. O'Malley moved in from the front. At last, the dog had enough of studying O'Malley. Turning suddenly, he beheld the other net carrier. Nearly caught, he had no time to study this new danger. He gave one defiant bark and ran down the grade. But the two men would not let him go so easily and gave chase. "You wild fiend!" Mr. Ames cried. "You won't leave my dandy alone. Wait until I lay a hand on you." The dog had obviously been in the town long enough to know it well. He headed for the open ball field where the chances of his being caught were slim. The two men, now angered by the obvious intelligence of the dog, refused to give up. O'Malley, who was in vastly better shape than Ames, and younger besides, raced ahead and waved his arm to Ames to make a detour and try to cut the dog off. The dog seemed to be enjoying the chase. Suddenly, he deserted the open field and headed downtown. The two would-be dog catchers followed behind. With bold defiance, the mutt trotted just ahead of them, alongside moving cars, in and out between parked ones, looking back occasionally to see how they were doing. He barked if they fell behind and stopped, waiting for them. People were beginning to stop on the sidewalk and stare. At last, Mr. Ames dropped out of the chase. He was out of breath. O'Malley was still in hot pursuit. After all, he was the dog catcher. He was in the public eye. He could not, must not give up. So down the length of Main Street they went. "Give a hand here," he called out, puffing now. "Cut him off!" Up the street they went again. Then the dog led poor O'Malley down the alley beside a hotel. Here there was a wide circular mud puddle. The water was clear, and it was time for a drink. With the assurance of a winner, the dog stopped on the near side and began to lap water. O'Malley, exhausted, caught up. Desperately he threw his net. The dog sidestepped. It missed. Then O'Malley slipped in the mud, and before he could steady himself, he splashed face downwards in the puddle. The few spectators who had caught up laughed as the short man raised himself up, wiping the soapy mud from his face and mustache. The dog stood well back and barked, walked on, then turned and barked again. It was as though he too were laughing. He had won, but from now on he had the most dangerous enemy a dog could possibly have. End of chapter 4.